Hey, welcome back to Career Cravings Podcast. It is I, your host, Irina, and I can't wait for you to hear today's episode. In today's show, I had my longtime client, Ekta, join me, and she has been a repeat client. When we met, she was looking for her next role for over 6 months with literally zero interviews. And then within the first 30 days of working together, she landed 2 offers. And we are going to break down the shifts that really made an impact for her so that you can do the same too. And spoiler alert, the first thing she ever did was join my free training. And I thought, why not host it again? So if you have been looking for your next HR role for months, you're not sure how to crack the code, you're not sure why it's not working, then you need to join me for this free training live, which is happening on April 16th. Swipe up, save your seat in the show notes, and I cannot wait to see you there. Hey, it's Irina Pozan, and welcome back to the Career Cravings Podcast. This podcast has a simple mission. It's to help ambitious professionals like you build the career and life that you've been craving. Over the past 15 years, I've worked as an HR leader, designed hiring systems, led recruitment teams, and I've sat on the other side of the hiring table. I've seen what works in today's job market, what doesn't, and what separates those good candidates from the ones that actually land their dream roles. Now I'm bringing everything I've learned straight to you. Each episode is packed with actionable insights and tools to help you land your dream role sooner. Now let's dive in. Well, hello and welcome back to the Career Cravings Podcast. With me, I have my beautiful client, Ekta, who I've known for a number of years now. And it's been so incredible to see your journey and see all of the exciting things that have happened, including recently you getting married, like so many fun things, new roles and new adventures. So I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Arina. It does feel like it's been a lot of years of knowing each other, but that's a good thing. I'm really honored to be part of your journey and career cravings, of course.
I love that. Okay, so let's dive in. Let's take it back to when we met. So I'd love to hear more about where you were in your career journey, what your aspirations were at the time. Tell me more.
When we first met, I had recently moved to Canada. I believe I was 6 months into my move, and it was around, I want to say October, end of September, October of 2023, if I'm not mistaken. I had reached out to you after I had joined one of your the free webinars and the programs that you offer. And it was really inspiring right off the bat. We hadn't connected personally then, but just being part of that initiative was just so empowering and was really, really helpful. I remember reaching out and inquiring about the financial investment it would take to be part of HR Star. And at the time, I was working a minimum wage job. I hadn't really made any progress or headway with my HR applications. So when I heard about the opportunity to join HR Star, for me, it was the money that was a roadblock, I would say, because it was not something I was prepared to commit to. Fast forward a few months from that workshop, nothing had changed for me. I was at that time exactly 6 months into my job search journey. I was new to Canada. I had 5 years of HR experience from back in my home country, and I was struggling to even get a screening call. So it was pretty hard and disappointing as an experience at that point. It was very demotivating, and it was really hard to stay upbeat and positive and motivated to do the same thing over and over again for days with no tangible results.
Yes.
So that is the point where I think I had made a decision to take a leap of faith and invest in myself and a career for me, which is when I had signed up for HR Star.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like I can feel and like relive that time along with you. But I remember our first meeting. Like I remember telling you, you have a beautiful energy. We need to get you in front of people. They're going to love you, but they need to meet you because you weren't getting those interviews. And it wasn't for a lack of effort. I mean, you had applied for 6 months, but your profile was so great. Like you had great experience. You had a great education, your master's, right? And like international experience, also international education. And I'm like, people are just not getting it on paper, right? So we need to get you in front. And that was the whole plan. But also immigrating as an adult, starting in a brand new country over again, working a minimum wage job, like I can completely see why the investment made you pause. And you're like, although I love the session, like this isn't something that I can do right now. And then I love that you kind of thought about it more and you're like, okay, I'm gonna make the investment. What shifted for you in that time where you're like, initially you were like, I'm not sure this is the right thing financially. What shifted for you to make that decision and to go for it and take the leap?
I want to say I think it was I personally felt I was reaching a point of saturation and also kind of like hitting the rock bottom. As you rightly pointed out, moving to a new country, especially as an adult and a working adult, is a really tough decision to make to begin with. You're aware of the realities of the challenges you may face, but I don't think anything truly prepares you for how difficult it can be. Just apart from navigating a new social setting or a culture, I think the added pressure of having to set your career up as soon as you can is much harder than what I think most adults can anticipate or prepare for. When I moved, I was mentally ready and I had mentally convinced myself that this is going to take a while. But I think what I was not ready for was the absolute zero, responses, lack of any communication and any kind of, I guess, positive reinforcement through the process, which is going to take time, but some hints along the way to say that, okay, you're on the right track. And then I think what was the flipping point for me was quite literally, I want to say that 6-month mark. I was already struggling, but when I saw the calendar and I was like, oh my God, it's been 6 months to date that I actually, arrived here and I've had zero screening calls and zero progress in terms of the interviews or even the job search journey is when I felt, okay, clearly something I've been doing right now is not working. So I need to make a change. I recall one of the takeaways from your workshop was that you shouldn't have to alter or tailor your resume to the job that you're applying for, which is exactly what I was doing actually. And it was still not getting me any results. So clearly that's when I was like, okay, I need to do something big or something serious in terms of the way I'm approaching the job search journey here. And even though it was a considerable financial investment at the time, for me, it was just, okay, clearly what I'm doing is not working. So you need to do something different to see a different result. So that I think for me was one key thing that really changed my mindset. Another thing was, I think also, which for me personally is worth mentioning, is a little bit of encouragement from your people. I recall having the conversation at that time with my, now husband and also with my father, because these are people who I usually confide in and who had seen me go through the journey until then. And I was so hesitant. I was like, it's a lot of money. And I remember both of them giving me the exact same advice to be like, think about if you're successful, what you're going to get in return. Right? It was literally that they told me. They're like, it's not about the money as much as it is, what is it going to get you? And if it gets you what it's promising it will get you, think about how fast you're going to make that money back with a good job, right? So I feel like that was a little bit of an added push or the encouragement I needed or the confirmation I needed that I was thinking along the right lines. And that's what prompted me to make that decision.
I never knew that. They give great advice.
Yeah.
Knowing what I know now, I mean, seeing how quickly things changed for you.
Yeah.
And you're right. It is an investment. And especially in your situation, that's nothing that anyone should take lightly moving. And there's a lot of different fees and costs to restart everything from like buying a new couch, like every single thing. And I love that you thought about it long term in terms of the ROI. Like, how long would it take me to make back X if I'm actually in the career that I'm meant to be in sooner, right? And I always think of it like it's really expensive to not be in the role at your potential. So if you're ready to be, let's say, an HR advisor, but you're working minimum wage, that is a lot of money every single week and in lost potential as well, right? Where you could be
Absolutely.
earning so much more. So,
I completely agree. And I think even apart from the financial loss that you're probably experiencing by not being employed at your potential, I think the larger impact and I'm sure most people who've shared a similar journey will agree, is the impact it has on your mental health and your
mm,
motivation. Um,
yes,
I was, of course, working a minimum wage job with the idea to temporarily support myself as best as I can while I'm looking for something more fulfilling.
yeah,
But it does take a toll on your mental health. While it's nice to be independent and be able to sustain yourself, of course, but it doesn't discount you walking into a job which you know that you can do a lot more and you know
yes,
you're obviously severely overqualified for. Not to say that there's something wrong with it, but it's just that you know you're not living up to your potential, which by itself sometimes is such a big, I would say, demotivating factor. So 6 months into doing a minimum wage job, I was like, I just felt I was reaching a breaking point where I truly did not want to do that anymore. And like I said, around the same time, I started thinking more long term in terms of the money invested versus what you get in return, and taking a chance that this is something worth pursuing.
amazing. And, I have come to Canada as a small child immigrating, but watching my parents take on, like, my dad took on two minimum wage jobs. He couldn't even speak English. My mom couldn't even afford to put me in daycare so she could work because that would be too much. And watching them struggle through that was like it changed my outlook on my whole life. So I haven't had that experience personally as an adult, but I have experienced being in roles for much too long that I know I'm overqualified for. And for me, what that did was like it led to health concerns because, to your point, the mental health aspect of being unhappy and thinking about that keeps you up at night. Like I started getting insomnia. I couldn't sleep. I had all of these different thoughts that would come when I would try to quiet my mind. And I just knew I wasn't happy where I was, but I also felt stuck. So, okay, let's move on to the positive because I know things changed very quickly once you made that
There's
decision.
light at the end of the tunnel.
So, let's walk through the positivity. Tell me what happened after you made that decision. You joined HR Star.
The decision itself actually felt empowering. I did
Mhm.
not expect that. And I need to mention that for a quick minute because I think just the idea that I've done something different in an attempt to improve my situation, my career, or my, long-term success chances, that itself felt really empowering.
Mm.
So I
Yes.
think it begins with that, just the active choice to be like, okay, I'm making a commitment or an investment in myself. Not to say that I did not do that in other ways before, but after feeling a little stuck for so long, or having that feeling that I feel like I've done everything I can at that point, or I've exhausted all avenues that I have access to. So now doing that additional step, which yes, comes at a cost, but that decision itself, I think, felt empowering.
Oh my goodness. That's so interesting. I felt like that too, making different investments in coaching myself. Like that minute, it's like terrifying putting in your credit card detail.
Yes.
Like it's like, what am I even doing? This is thousands of dollars. This is nuts. What if this adds no value?
Yes.
And then once you're in it, it's like a relief
Yes.
of like, okay, I'm changing my approach. And now getting to know you so much better, I know how goal oriented you are too. So I could see why the 6 month point, you probably had a goal associated with,
Yes.
working in your career. And then you were like, okay, this is breaking point. I'm doing something different, setting a new goal and taking action to correct kind of how things have gone in the initial job search. Okay, amazing. So you felt empowered making that decision. And what happened next?
I recall after that, we had our first one-on-one one of the first things you obviously worked on is my resume. Until date, I think it was like a big life-changing, game-changing situation, I think. Because I recall, as you rightly pointed out earlier, I do remember you telling me that you have an amazing background, skill set, experience, even communication skills. And you told me all someone needs to do is just get to know you. Because this was even before you had coached me on how to give interviews, the right way and things like that. You said, I'm so confident that you're going to be able to, crack any interview you give. You just need to get to that stage. And again, it was comments like that and interactions like that that really helped me change my mindset. Because I think I was slowly slipping a little bit into the passive, woe's me, victim mentality, which again, it was not it consciously, but just because of the circumstances. But having a mentor, which I consider you right from day one, and having someone believe in you and tell you that, you know what, you're going to be good at this. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to work on. Just having that extra support and encouragement, I think, made a lot of difference in changing my mindset.
I'm so glad.
Which was really important, I think, going into your job search journey. You start off
Yes.
with that, but over time that tends to wane a little. And I think it was really nice to find that back. And I think, as I mentioned, the resume was a big game changer. We had our first call. You showed me my updated resume. And I remember looking at it myself and I'm like, that's all me, actually. It was so strange. I'm like, wait a minute, that is true. I did get a promotion. I did do these things, which I think you had highlighted obviously in a really obvious way through my resume. And I started using that resume, and I literally started getting calls within 3 days of using the resume.
Yeah.
Which I think was just insane. I remember getting my first screening phone call and I was like, what is happening right now? I mean, I was so surprised. And then honestly, the calls just kept coming after that. And it got to a point where I want to say 2 weeks in, if I didn't get a call for a job, I was kind of wondering, okay, something's up. Like it really shifted so drastically. I recall every second day or third day getting a screening call at the very least. And that's when I was like, when I was applying for a job and I didn't hear back in a few days, I was questioning it. Okay, what went wrong here? Because I'd come to almost low-key expect at least a screening call. So I really owe that big change to you. And in hindsight, or in theory, it seems like, oh, you've just polished up your resume. But I don't think it was just that. It was a big part of it, but just that initial motivation, conversation, and even just the way you helped me approach the job search was just life-changing.
Oh, I love hearing this and seeing the big shift. And I remember that meeting. And sometimes I'm like, I saw your potential and I saw it right away. And I'm like, people are going to love you, because I meet with people all the time, every day, that are competing for the same roles that you were wanting to land as well. And, I love hearing about the confidence, because that's something you take with you no matter where you go. And of course, we want to have a positive mindset in job search, but it's easier said than done when you're not hearing anything from the other side, right?
Yeah.
So I remember being excited, but I can never know how things are going to go. I mean, I can know from past data, I can assume, but I loved that right away things shifted as confidence to know you made the right decision at the very least, that things are shifting. And to your point, the resume, it was you. Like, that's you. There was nothing in there that's not you or something that you had accomplished, but making it super obvious that you are a top candidate for the type of role you're going for. I remember you were looking for that like mid-level kind of HR role, and being your first role in Canada. And I remember like what I do on the back end is look at the competencies that those types of roles would be looking for as well. And then pulling out from your story, everything you've authentically done, the perfect matches, and not focusing on anything else. So I remember like even you mentioning you were working a minimum wage job, like you were working in retail, not focusing too much on that stuff, focusing in on like all of that deep, rich experience you had previously and like really calling out the high performer that you are, right? The promotions, the high education, like all of that. And sometimes it's hard to do that for ourselves because we're so close to our profile and we're like, no, everyone has this. And it's like, no, they don't. No, like this is what sets you apart. So I love it. So you started having the interviews. That was new. And I'm assuming they were going fairly well as well by what happened next.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've never been someone who is overly nervous with interviews. I must admit, I've always considered myself fairly confident with interviews. But what was new to me was how to prepare for an interview and how to focus on answering the questions in a specific format on a way or a specific way. So I was never nervous about, oh my God, what are they going to ask me? But I think maybe like a lot of other people, once you start talking, you may go off tangent, you may ramble about things. You have to, you know what you want to answer, but probably you don't phrase or structure your answer in the right way. I recall sitting down with my laptop and about an hour is what I spent going through all of the modules on HR Star, on each competency, and writing my notes on the example I want to give for each of those and preparing that as my responses. I spent about an hour doing it. And by the end of it, I felt so confident about that interview. Even before I went in, I was like, okay, there's nothing that they can ask me that I feel that I'm not going to be able to answer. I spent some time just talking out my answers out loud, making sure I am being precise, and again, structuring it in using the STAR format, using the right metrics, highlighting the results. And I think I've never felt more prepared going into an interview. Not just from okay, I can converse well, but from a knowledge standpoint or even from a results-driven standpoint, to be able to convincingly say, yes, I am actually the best candidate for the job.
Yes.
So that was really, really, really nice to know and learn. And since then, I've applied that for almost every interview that I have done. I actually have a notebook full of notes, which I keep updating for every interview that I go. I'm like, oh, wait, what did I talk about as an example for this one previously, and it's and I keep adding to it as I progress in my career because there are always new situations and examples you can share, but it's like a holy grail now where I'm like, okay, I have to keep books safe.
I love that because it's often too late when you're trying to think back on the last 5 years or something like that. And you're like, what did I do? I didn't do that much. But when you're doing it day to day, now knowing like the type of competencies people are going to be asking you about, your labor relations, your employee relations, cases, investigations, like all of these different things, and like jotting down those stories as they come up is so much better. Okay, I love it. And what was the end result of all the preparation, the interview notes, all of the phone screens that came in?
So so you already know this, a spoiler alert, but
the leading question.
But I recall landing 2 job offers within a month of joining HR Start. And it still gets me so emotional talking about it today, but it was because it had what felt like a very challenging few months leading up to it. I was just blown away. I recall getting the phone call about my offer and I was so excited. I don't even think I truly processed everything the recruiter said after. Apart from, oh, you've got the job. Everything else, I was like, okay, it was just so secondary and faded in the background on that call. And I was so ecstatic. I remember, making phone calls to my family, sharing the news.
I was going to ask you, like, what did your husband say? What did your dad say? Because, like, you went to them for advice a month before.
Yeah, they were just, they were so happy and ecstatic for me. And they were just really, really, I think, relieved for me, but also just so supportive of the entire, journey. And I'm so glad there were people who pushed me to make a tough decision, what felt like a tough decision a month ago. But I think that's another key takeaway I would share for anyone is have your people. Your people are so important. You need someone who truly understands you and who's able to push you to make decisions which may not make sense to you at the time maybe, or which you're hesitant to make, but who are able to see the long-term value and who are outside of this job search journey. Because I think someone in it, or even yourself, sometimes you truly cannot see beyond that. But I'm so lucky to have those people in my life, and I'm so happy they pushed me when they did. So when I shared the news, they were just so ecstatic, and I remember feeling so cathartic. I broke down, and I was just it just felt like such a beautiful conclusion to what felt like a tough few months. And I owe that to you and HR Star program. Honestly, you've heard me say enough number of times, but I truly mean it when you've played such an important role in me getting that first job, that first call. I'm sure people like me or immigrants or people who've shared a journey like me can understand what value that truly holds, Any job is, of course, special, but that first one is, I think nothing truly beats that.
Thank you so much. And from my end, I remember you sharing it with me the first time. And I know we've talked about it a number of times now and in person when I saw you this summer or I guess last summer now. But that feeling of getting the message, because I take on like me meeting you and saying, oh, I know people just need to meet you. And I know, like, I see the potential. Like me doing that after the call, sometimes I'm like, oh shit, like what? I don't want to promise something that may not happen. Like, what if it doesn't happen this way? So when it does, and I see that come in and I could see just the transformation in your confidence and how excited you are and how you get to resign and like move into this new chapter that like all along we both knew you were meant for. And for that to happen so quickly, I was one of your people that's like super excited to see that happen. I was like, yes.
I remember emailing you and I was ready to take that offer. Incidentally, I received a second offer within a week of receiving the first one, which swayed my mind. I honestly, when I got the first offer, I was like, oh my God, this is it. I'm going to take it. This is me. My life's moving forward finally in the right way. And then I got a second offer, which I'm like, how am I suddenly the person who's having to choose between offers? I so recall saying that to my husband. I was like, wait, a month ago, I was, barely getting any calls. And how am I someone in a position today who's getting to choose between two really good and competitive offers? It was such a full circle moment to just stop for a second and feel the gratitude for whatever and whoever it is that got you to that point, It's so easy to now look back and be like, oh, okay, it was a given, it was going to happen, but that it just didn't feel like that at the time. So it was a really interesting moment to reflect on and be like, okay, now suddenly I have to make a choice. I had two offers and I remember we'd gone away for the weekend to a cottage up in Muskoka just around that time. And I woke up early one morning. I was sitting on the couch and I was like, okay, listing out pros and cons and how I feel about each of those offers, and finally decided to go with the second one. But it was a very rewarding experience and a very humbling moment, honestly.
That is the perfect mindset, the gratitude, because it's not a given. And, having that mindset is just so true to who you are, and to be like grateful for the opportunity, right? Even the first one, the second one, and then getting to choose. I remember the pro and con list. I remember trying to talk it through with you. And I'm like, well, I don't know these companies, but here's what I think. I think the day in the life of this one will be X. I think this one's a little more like this. What do you think feels right? And then you ended up ultimately making the decision, which amazing. Having choice in this type of job market is everything. Right? Because it's rare. Having choice is rare, unfortunately. It shouldn't be the case, but it just is.
It absolutely was. And I think it's a testimony to, honestly, your program, your methods, and your approach and your coaching. And I don't say this lightly at all, because everyone I knew, people who had been in Canada much longer than me, including my husband, were shocked. They were literally like, I don't think I've known anyone who has moved gotten 2 job offers in 6 months at a really good competitive compensation package as well. Not an entry level position, but well within what my skill set and my career level was at. So I really think I owe that to you and the effort it went into, inspiring me, coaching me, and mentoring.
That was effortless. You're such a pleasure to work with. That was effortless. But thank you so much for the kind words. And, a big myth that people believe, and often advice that could be a little bit damaging that new immigrants get, is like, start anywhere, take anything, and like just be grateful and start from entry level every single time. But sometimes with someone like you, with your education, with your years of experience, entry level, you're overqualified for.
Yes. I recall you telling me that as well.
Yes, and it's even harder sometimes than going for the actual level that you should be at, especially when you have all of the skills and capabilities. The one thing you don't have when you move to a new country is working in HR, specifically the laws and regulations, working under those new laws in that country. Yes, right? That's a given, but that doesn't mean you start from the beginning. You don't start from your career from scratch. That's
absolutely. And there are ways to kind of, I would say, address that as well, which is what I did. And that is still date and advice I give to anyone who reaches out to me on LinkedIn or anyone who has just moved and who's looking for any advice. The only thing I say is, sure, HR skills and knowledge are transferable. 80% of it is transferable across cultures, continents, countries, companies, industries. But the one thing you do have to work a little harder to kind of gain strength on is employment law or employment legislation. And there are ways to do it. I did it by simply picking up a employment law course from an online university, which was really helpful. And again, it was an investment to make monetarily or financially as well. But I can categorically say that it's well worth it. Because I recognized at the time that was a major gap in my knowledge or in my ability to interview or give correct responses or even know the job for that matter. And I tried my best to address it. But apart from that, I don't think you always have to compromise, take what you get. Yes, there is some wisdom in seeing an opportunity for what it is. But I do want to say everyone's journey is different and everyone's priorities are different and situation is different. If you can afford to hold on and sift through and really focus on the right opportunity you want, I think you should do it. But if you're mentally, emotionally, financially in a situation where you may need to compromise and you're okay with the compromise, again, that's a personal decision to make. You could settle for a slightly lower job, but again, it really depends on the person. I don't think it's a blanket rule, and I agree with you. The advice that most people get when you first move to a new country is get your foot in the door, take what you get. You can't afford to be picky or you can't afford to be really choosy. I don't think that's entirely true. There are situations where you may have to compromise, but I don't think that's a blanket rule, and certainly not at the cost of you feeling overqualified or not at the cost of you feeling dissatisfied.
I love that. Such a beautiful conversation. I feel like we touched on everything, but what would be advice that you give to your younger self 3 years ago, kind of just starting your job search journey over again, knowing what you know now? What advice would you have given your past version of yourself?
I think I would have advised myself to be mentally more resilient. I know that sounds maybe a little harsh coming from me today, but I tied back to what I said earlier about nothing truly prepares you for how tough sometimes it can be. But I think you need to keep faith, keep faith in yourself, keep faith in your decisions that have led you to where you are. I recall reminding myself why I made certain choices or why I did the things that I did. And it's important to remind yourself of that from time to time, especially when your journey gets tough.
Yes.
And I think the other advice I would give is focus on moving forward, think forward. Any action you do, any investment you make, any decision you make, think how it's going to benefit you in the long term or think forward. It's so easy to be caught up in the short term or the
Yeah.
immediate, especially when you're struggling or when you are new to something or when you feel that you don't have too many options. But the truth is, what really gets you ahead is being able to think ahead, not just for the immediate, but maybe 5 steps ahead. So
Yes.
whether that is, as I said, making a financial investment or an investment of your time or a decision about what job to pursue, what level of opportunity you want to pursue, I think it's important to, think more long term and focus forward, on the future as opposed to more short term or immediate gains, especially if you've been through a journey similar to mine.
Yes.
So I
Very
think that,
wise words. Both of those, like,
yeah,
mic drop. I think of the first one, and you talk about, like, resiliency, and, of course, we've already talked about all the reasons why it can be difficult and being stuck in, like, a more negative focusing on what's not working, right, at
yeah,
that time, because that's something that's in front of you. But a tool that I love to do, and I love to do this myself too, we often don't give ourselves the credit of how much we have done when we haven't met the goal yet, when we're working towards something difficult. And it's like, yes, we can focus on, well, I'm ready for that role and I haven't landed it yet. But then also taking a minute to even just reflect or journal on in the last, let's say, 6 months, I've moved countries, I've started my life over. I've restarted this and that. I've taken a new course. I've like all of the hard things that have been overcome. And that often gives us confidence to be like, okay, if I just did all that shit, I'm going to do the next thing too, right? Like, I got this. I can do hard things. And just sometimes we need to remind ourselves of that like, I can do hard things. This is just another hard thing
yeah.
that I'm going to be getting through and reminding, like, being our own cheerleader in that. But I'm so glad you had a great network around you that was so supportive and cheering you on, and then was able to also celebrate the wins with you when
Yes.
you
And
got.
I think most people have that. That's another underrated, I think, aspect of our lives. It can be
So true.
anyone, it can be your friend, your partner, your family member, or it can be, like a mentor, a coach, or anyone. But I truly believe in the value of surrounding yourself with those people. And sure, like a job search or a journey can be quite lonely
Yeah.
because only you know what you're going through, no matter how much someone can empathize. But it really helps having your people around,
Yes.
whoever that may be. And it helps to have someone remind you on days when you're struggling to remind yourself, like we just spoke about, and acknowledge and appreciate that. I think it does make a difference, whether it's just talking to a friend or a mentor, as I said, just even for a few minutes, just to kind of share where you're at. And maybe they'll give you a different perspective or the push you finally need to do something different.
I love that. What a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much, Ekta. Thank you for being here. And I can't wait to reconnect and see what 2026 brings for you as well.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for having me. And of course, we'll be in touch. But I really appreciate you taking the time to invite me and also let me share my journey here.
My pleasure. Bye. Have a
Bye.
beautiful, beautiful evening. Hey, before you go, if you've enjoyed listening to today's show, I would love your support. Please take a moment to leave a review anywhere where you listen to podcasts. And here's the exciting part. I'm running a special contest and giving away a one-on-one session with yours truly. All you have to do is leave a review, take a screenshot, and send it to me in my DMs. All of my contact info is in the show notes. I appreciate you so much, and I cannot wait to build the career and life that you've been craving together. See you next week.